She had the life people dream about on Instagram. A van, a fiancé, an open road stretching across America, national parks, sunsets, thousands of followers watching every post. Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old full of light, full of plans, and she was finally living the life she had always imagined. But here is what nobody saw behind those beautiful pictures. The arguments, the control, the tears she wiped away before hitting record. And the moment, somewhere in the wild Wyoming wilderness, when everything she had ever hoped for was taken from her by the person who was supposed to love her most. This is Gabby Petito's case, and this is Verdict After Dark. Gabby grew up on Long Island, New York, the eldest of 6 children, creative, warm and full of energy. She met Brian Laundrie in high school, and by all appearances, they were the perfect couple. By the year 2020, they were engaged. Brian proposed and Gabby said yes, posting on Instagram, "You make life feel unreal and every day is such a dream with you." They had a plan, a beautiful, exciting plan. They converted a Ford Transit van into a camper. They saved their money, and on July 2nd, 2021, they set off from Blue Point, New York, heading across the country to visit America's greatest national parks. Gabby would document everything on her YouTube channel, Nomadic Static, and build a career as a travel creator. Her mom, Nicole, came to see them off that morning. "I have so many good memories," Nicole later said through tears. "But the one thing I hold close to me is the hug we had before she left in the driveway. It was the last hug she would ever give her daughter." For the first few weeks, the photos were stunning. Wildflowers, mountain roads, golden hour lights. Gabby was glowing. But behind the camera, something was wrong. Friends later said that the trip went on. Brian became increasingly dismissive of Gabby's work and her dreams. Controlling, cold, and witnesses were starting to notice. On August 12, 2021, 6 weeks into the trip, a 911 call was made by a witness in Utah. They reported seeing a man hitting a woman near a white van. Police pulled them over. When they found on that body camera footage would later shock the entire world. Gabby was in tears, unable to speak, wiping her face, struggling to breathe between sentences. She told officers she had anxiety, that they had been arguing, that things had got physical. Brian had scratches on his face. Gabby had visible marks on hers. But here is where things went terribly wrong. Officers classified the incident as a mental health crisis, not domestic violence. No arrests were made. They separated the couple for the night, Brian to a hotel, Gabby alone in the van, and sent them on their way the next morning. A senior officer later took a leave of absence over how the situation was handled. Gabby's family would go on to file a $50 million lawsuit against the Moab Police Department in Utah. But that night, nobody knew what was coming. The trip continued, the posts continued, the smiles continued. But on August 25th, Gabby made her last ever Instagram post. A post from Grand Teton National Park, Wyoming. She was smiling, she looked happy. 2 days later, she was seen for the last time. Witnesses spotted Gabby and Brian arguing outside a restaurant in Jackson, Wyoming. Called the Mary Piglets. She was in tears. He was visibly angry. That was the last confirmed sighting of Gabby Petito alive. That same evening, Brian made a series of frantic phone calls to his parents, telling them Gabby was gone and that he needed help. His parents called the attorney immediately after. Then came the text messages. On August 27th, Gabby's mom received a strange text from her daughter's phone. It referred to Gabby's grandfather by his first name, something Gabby never did. Her mom said instantly it felt wrong. More texts followed, each designed to make it look like Gabby was still alive and fine. Texts later confirmed by the FBI to have been sent by Brian Laundrie from Gabby's phone. After her death, he started building his lie. On September 1st, Brian Laundrie drove with the van back to his parents' home in Northport, Florida, alone. He said nothing. His parents said nothing. When Gabby's family desperately reached out to the Laundries begging for information about their daughter's whereabouts, the Laundries referred them to a lawyer. On September 11th, 10 days after Brian returned, Gabby's mother finally filed a missing person report. When police arrived at the Laundrie home, they found the van. They found Brian, but Brian refused to speak. His family refused to cooperate. We haven't been able to sleep or eat, and our lives are falling apart, Gabby's family said in a statement. All we want is for Gabby to come home. On September 15th, Brian was named a person of interest. 2 days later, he was gone too. His parents told police he had gone for a hike. They hadn't seen him since September 13th. The world was watching and the clock was ticking. On September 19, 2021, searchers found human remains in the Bridgeton-Dayton National Forest in Wyoming, near where the van had been last spotted. It was Gabby. The autopsy confirmed she had been killed by blunt force trauma to the head and neck and manual strangulation. She was 22 years old. A national manhunt for Brian followed. 37 days after he disappeared on October 20th, his remains were found in Florida National Reserve, along with a backpack and a notebook. In that notebook, Brian Laundrie had written his confession. "I ended her life," he wrote. "I thought it was merciful." He claimed she had suffered an accident and was in unbearable pain, but the autopsy told a completely different story, and Gabby's family had never believed his version of events. Brian died of self-inflicted gunshot wounds. He never faced a court trial, never answered for what he did. The Laundrie family later settled a wrongful death lawsuit with Gabby's family for $3 million. A letter from Brian's own mom addressed to her son and marked "born after reading" was later admitted as evidence in the lawsuit. It referenced an offer to help bury a body. Gabby Petito wanted to show the world something beautiful. She wanted to build a life on the road, share her adventures, and prove that a young woman with a van and a dream could make something out of nothing. And she was doing it. But behind every perfect post in a relationship that was slowly suffocating her, and the partner who would ultimately take her life, the warning signs were there. The police saw them on that day on the roadside in Moab. The witnesses saw them outside the restaurant in Wyoming. Even Gabby's own words in private text to her mom hinted at a reality for darker than the one she was sharing online. 3 things you must take from this story. 1. Domestic violence does not always look like what we expect. It can hide behind smiles, sunsets, and Instagram filters. 2. When someone reports seeing abuse, authorities must take it seriously. That night in Moab could have changed everything. 3. Gabby's legacy lives on. Her parents founded the Gabby Petito Foundation, dedicated to helping other missing persons and domestic violence victims. But as her father said, everybody deserves to be found. Rest in peace, Gabby. This has been Verdict After Dark. If this story moved you, subscribe, share it with someone, and come back next week. because there are more stories that the world needs to hear.